The ice sculpture was ridiculous. A massive swan, nearly 6 feet tall, carved with such intricate detail that Zeph, Bordeaux could see individual feathers etched into its frozen wings. It sat on a pedestal in the center of the Peninsula Hotel's grand ballroom, slowly melting under strategically placed lights that made it shimmer like a diamond. Zeph stood in the service corridor, peering through the crack in the door, and wondered what kind of person commissioned a dying swan for their wedding reception. The kind of person who was about to ruin a good man's life, apparently. Her burnt orange silk dress, the color of a sunset over the Mississippi, her grandmother would have said, rustled as she shifted her weight from one aching foot to the other. The dress had cost her 3 months of savings from her job at the art restoration studio, but it was worth every penny. The fabric draped across her deep brown skin like liquid fire, with a tasteful slit that ended just above her knee and delicate spaghetti straps that showed off her collarbones. She'd paired it with her grandmother's vintage pearl necklace, the only piece of jewelry she owned that could hold its own in a room full of billionaires. Zeph checked her phone. 2:47 p.m. The ceremony was supposed to start at 3:00, which meant she had exactly 13 minutes to find Minjun Park and convince him that marrying Victoria Ashford Chen was a catastrophic idea. The problem was, she'd never actually met Minjun Park. "This is insane," she muttered to herself, pressing her palm against her churning stomach. "This is absolutely insane, Zephyrine. You are about to crash a billionaire's wedding based on a hunch and some overheard conversations in a coffee shop." But it wasn't just a hunch. Zeph had spent the last 3 weeks piecing together a puzzle that had landed in her lap purely by accident. It started when she'd been restoring a 19th century portrait at the studio, and Victoria Ashford Chen had walked in with her assistant, talking loudly on her phone about finalizing the merger and securing the Park Technologies partnership. At first, Zeph hadn't thought much of it. Rich people talked about business deals the way normal people talked about the weather. But then Victoria had come back, again and again. Each time, Zeph overheard more fragments, something about eliminating the soul division, and the old man doesn't need to know until after the wedding, and most damningly, once I have access to the patents, we can shut down the entire ethical AI division and recoup the losses. Zeph knew about the ethical AI division. Everyone in tech did. Minjun Park had revolutionized the industry 5 years ago by creating AI systems with built-in ethical frameworks, refusing to sell to military contractors or surveillance companies, even when it cost him billions. He'd become a folk hero to people like Zeph's younger brother, Marcus, who studied computer science and plastered his dorm room with articles about Park's principles. And now Victoria Ashford Chen was about to marry him, get access to his company's most valuable assets, and destroy everything he'd built. Zeph took a deep breath and pushed open the service door. The ballroom was even more overwhelming from the inside. White roses everywhere, on every table, hanging in cascading arrangements from the ceiling, woven into garlands that wrapped around marble columns. The guests were already seated, hundreds of them in designer suits and couture gowns, chattering in at least 6 different languages. Zeph counted 3 people she recognized from Forbes covers. She slipped along the wall, trying to look like she belonged there. The key to crashing anything, her college roommate had once told her, was to walk with purpose and act like you were supposed to be there. Zeph adopted her best, "I'm definitely on the guest list" expression and made her way toward the front of the room. That's when she saw him. Minjun Park stood near the altar, adjusting his cufflinks with the kind of mechanical precision that suggested deep distraction. He was taller than she'd expected from his photos, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his bespoke charcoal suit perfectly. His dark hair was styled back from his face, revealing sharp cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, dark and intelligent, scanning the room with an expression that looked less like pre-wedding joy and more like a man calculating his escape routes. He looked miserable. Zeph's heart hammered against her ribs. She was really going to do this. She was going to walk up to a billionaire she'd never met and tell him his fiancée was planning to destroy his life's work. She made it 3 steps before a hand clamped down on her shoulder. "Excuse me, miss." The security guard was built like a refrigerator and had the kind of expressionless face that suggested he'd thrown out better-dressed people than her. "Can I see your invitation?" Zeph's mind raced. "I'm with the bride's party," she said, infusing her voice with just enough indignation. "I'm running late because—" "Name." "Zephyrine Bordeaux." The guard pulled out a tablet and scrolled through what was presumably the guest list. His expression didn't change, but Zeph knew she had about 10 seconds before this went very badly. "I don't see a Bordeaux on the list." "That's because I'm a last-minute addition," Victoria specifically requested. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The guard's grip on her shoulder tightened, and Zeph felt her last chance slipping away. She looked past him, directly at Min-jun Park, and their eyes met across the room. Something flickered in his expression. Confusion, maybe, or curiosity. Zeph made a split-second decision. She pulled away from the guard and called out, loud enough to cut through the ambient conversation. "Min-jun, I'm so sorry I'm late." Every head in the ballroom turned toward her. Min-jun Park's eyes widened slightly. The guard's hand was back on her shoulder, more insistent now, but Zeph kept her eyes locked on the groom. "Please," she said, quieter now but with desperate intensity. "I need to talk to you. It's about Victoria and the patents. You're in danger." For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Min-jun just stared at her. The rational part of Zeph's brain noted that she was about to be forcibly removed from a billionaire's wedding, probably banned from the Peninsula Hotel for life, and possibly arrested for trespassing. The irrational part that had driven her here in the first place just kept thinking, "Please believe me, please believe me, please believe me." Then Min-jun Park did something Zeph never expected. He smiled. Not a polite smile or a confused smile, but a genuine, dazzling smile that transformed his entire face. He stepped away from the altar and walked toward her, his stride confident and purposeful. The guard's grip on Zeph's shoulder loosened in confusion. "Darling," Min-jun said, in a voice that carried perfectly across the silent ballroom. "There you are." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Zeph's brain short-circuited as Min-jun Park closed the distance between them. Up close, he was even more striking. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow that didn't show in photographs, and his cologne was subtle, something expensive with notes of cedar and bergamot. His hand reached for hers, warm and steady, and she barely had time to process what was happening before he was pulling her gently away from the security guard's grip. "I apologize for the confusion," Min-jun said smoothly to the guard, still holding Zeph's hand. "This is my—" He paused, and Zeph saw something flicker in his dark eyes. A calculation, a decision being made in real time. "My fiancé." The word landed like a bomb. Gasps rippled through the assembled guests. Someone dropped a program. In the front row, an elderly woman in a pale blue dress and enough diamonds to fund a small country clutched her pearls with genuine shock. Beside her, an older man who had to be Min-jun's father went absolutely rigid, his face turning an alarming shade of red. "You're what?" The screech came from near the altar. Victoria Ashford Chen materialized like a vengeful ghost, her white dress, an elaborate confection of silk and lace that probably cost more than Zeph's car, swishing dramatically as she stormed toward them. She was beautiful in that cultivated, untouchable way that came from excellent genes and better cosmetic dermatologists. Her blonde hair was swept into an intricate updo, her makeup flawless, her blue eyes blazing with fury. "Victoria," Min-jun said calmly, though Zeph noticed his thumb was now tracing small circles on the back of her hand. Comfort or warning, she couldn't tell. "We need to talk." "We need to," Victoria's voice climbed another octave. "Min-jun, we are getting married. In approximately—" She checked the diamond-encrusted watch on her wrist. 8 minutes. Who the hell is this?" Zeph found her voice, though it came out shakier than she would have liked. "I'm Zephyrine Bordeaux." "I don't care if you're Zephyrine Cleopatra Jones," Victoria snapped. "What are you doing at my wedding, and why is my fiancé calling you his fiancé?" Minjun's grip on Zeph's hand tightened almost imperceptibly. When he spoke, his voice carried across the ballroom with quiet authority. Because she is. We've been engaged for 6 months. The ballroom erupted. Guests were on their feet now, some shouting, others frantically pulling out their phones. Zeph caught fragments of conversation. Park Technology's stock is going to crater. Did you know about this? Someone call TMZ. Minjun's father rose from his seat, his face now purple with rage. Minjun-ah, he barked in Korean, then switched to accented English. What is the meaning of this? Explain yourself. But it was Victoria who commanded attention. She stood in front of them like an avenging angel, trembling with barely contained fury. This is absurd. This is a joke. Minjun, stop this nonsense right now and let's proceed with the ceremony. I can't do that, Minjun said quietly. I'm sorry, Victoria, but I can't marry you. Can't. Victoria looked like she might actually combust. We have a prenuptial agreement. We have merger documents. We have 300 guests and a reception dinner that cost $500,000. Send me the bill, Minjun replied. I'll cover everything, but the wedding is off. Zeph's mind was reeling. This wasn't how she'd imagined this going. She'd pictured pulling him aside, showing him the evidence she'd compiled, screenshots of Victoria's assistant's calendar, notes from the conversations she'd overheard, a paper trail that led to a corporate takeover scheme. She hadn't expected him to immediately claim her as his secret fiancée and blow up his own wedding in front of hundreds of witnesses. Victoria's eyes, cold and calculating, finally landed on Zeph with full force. She looked her up and down with unconcealed disdain. You, she said slowly. I've seen you before. You work at that little art studio downtown. You're nobody. You probably make, what, $40,000 a year? And you expect me to believe that Minjun Park, who is worth $12 billion, is engaged to you? The words were designed to wound, and they hit their mark. Zeph felt heat crawl up her neck, that familiar sting of being dismissed, of being made to feel small. She opened her mouth to respond, but Minjun beat her to it. Her salary is irrelevant, he said, his voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze nitrogen. And you will speak to her with respect, or you won't speak at all. Victoria's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes glittered with malice. Minjun's father pushed his way through the crowd, his wife trailing behind him looking distressed. Minjun, his father said in Korean, and even though Zeph couldn't understand the words, the tone was universal, disappointment mixed with fury. Minjun responded in the same language, his voice firm but respectful. The argument escalated quickly, other family members joining in. Zeph stood there, still holding Minjun's hand, feeling like she'd stepped into an alternate dimension. This was supposed to be simple. Warn the guy, show him the evidence, let him make his own decision. Instead, she was now apparently engaged to a man she'd met 30 seconds ago, in front of his entire family and half of Korea's business elite. Enough, Minjun switched back to English, his voice cutting through the chaos. I know this is unexpected. I know you all have questions, but I am not marrying Victoria Ashford Chen today, and that decision is final. He turned to Zeph, and she saw something unexpected in his eyes, a plea for trust. Zephyrine and I need to speak privately, if you'll all excuse us. Without waiting for permission, he began walking toward a side exit, pulling Zeph along with him. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, everyone too shocked to stop them. Zeph caught a glimpse of Victoria's face as they passed, no longer furious, but calculating, her expression shifting into something that sent a chill down Zeph's spine. They made it into a service hallway before Minjun finally released her hand. He immediately ran both hands through his perfectly styled hair, destroying it completely. Okay, he said, more to himself than to her. Okay, that happened. That happened. Zeph's voice came out as a squeak. That happened. You just told 300 people that I'm your fiancé. You just blew up your own wedding. What were you thinking? Minjun turned to face her fully, and now that they were alone, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. I was thinking, he said slowly, that a complete stranger just crashed my wedding to warn me that my fiancé is planning to betray me. I was thinking that you mentioned patents and the ethical AI division. information that only someone with inside knowledge would have. I was thinking that I've been looking for a way out of this nightmare for 3 months, and you just gave me one. Zeph stared at him. You knew Victoria was planning something? Yes, I suspected. He leaned against the wall, closing his eyes briefly. I didn't have proof. My lawyers couldn't find anything concrete, but I felt it. The way she pushed for the wedding to happen quickly. The way she kept asking about company structure, about who had access to what. The way she looked at me like I was a very expensive acquisition instead of a person. Then why were you going through with it? Min-jun opened his eyes, and there was something raw in his expression. Family obligation, business pressure. The merger between Park Technologies and Ashford Chen Industries would have created the largest tech conglomerate in Asia. My father has been planning this for 2 years. Breaking it off based on a feeling seemed selfish. But breaking it off based on a stranger in an orange dress is perfectly reasonable. Zeph couldn't keep the hysterical edge out of her voice. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. The dress is actually quite beautiful. Sunset orange, it suits you. Don't, Zeph held up a hand. Don't try to charm me right now. We need to figure out what happens next, because I have actual evidence of Victoria's plans, and you just committed to a fake engagement with a woman whose name you learned 60 seconds ago. Min-jun pushed off the wall, suddenly all business. You have evidence. Screenshots, recordings, documents. I've been collecting everything I could for 3 weeks. Zeph pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Victoria's been planning to strip Park Technologies for parts the moment she got access to your systems. She was going to shut down the ethical AI division, sell the patents to the highest bidder, including military contractors, and basically destroy everything you built. She watched Min-jun's face as she showed him the evidence, saw his expression shift from skepticism to shock to cold fury. When she played the recording of Victoria on the phone saying, "The old fool won't know what hit him until I've already sold off half his precious ethical division." His jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. "That's my father she's calling a fool," he said quietly. "My father, who built this company from nothing." "I know, I'm sorry." He looked up from the phone, his dark eyes intense. "Why did you do this? Why did you come here? You don't know me. This isn't your problem." Zeph thought about Marcus, about all the young computer scientists who saw Min-jun Park as proof that you could be successful and ethical, that you didn't have to sell your soul to make it in tech. She thought about her grandmother, who taught her that standing by while someone got hurt was the same as hurting them yourself. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply, "and because the world needs more people like you in it." Something shifted in Min-jun's expression, surprise, maybe, or recognition. Before he could respond, the service door burst open. Victoria stood there, no longer in her wedding dress but in a sleek black pantsuit, her hair down and her makeup still perfect. Behind her were 2 men in dark suits who definitely weren't wedding guests. "Well," Victoria said, her voice saccharine sweet, "isn't this cozy? Min-jun, darling, I think you and I need to have a conversation about breach of contract. As for you," her eyes locked on Zeph, "I think we need to discuss the consequences of corporate espionage." Min-jun stepped in front of Zeph protectively. "She's not going anywhere with you, Victoria." "Oh, I think she is. See, I have very good lawyers, and they're quite interested in how Miss Bordeaux here obtained private corporate information." Victoria's smile was sharp as a knife. "This could go very badly for her, unless, of course, you'd like to reconsider our arrangement." The threat hung in the air between them. Zeph felt Min-jun tense beside her, and she realized with growing horror that Victoria was offering him a choice. "Marry me anyway, or I'll destroy the woman who tried to save you." Min-jun's hand found hers again, his grip steady and sure. "No," he said calmly. "Here's what's going to happen instead." Min-jun's voice was steady, but Zeph could feel the tension radiating through his hand. "Here's what's going to happen instead," he repeated, his eyes locked on Victoria. "You're going to walk away from this. No lawsuits, no threats, no retaliation against Zephyrine. In exchange, I won't release the evidence she's collected to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Korean Financial Services Commission, and every major tech publication in 3 continents." Victoria's perfect smile faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? Minjun pulled out his own phone with his free hand, thumbs moving across the screen with practiced ease. I've just sent the files to my personal legal team with instructions to distribute them immediately if anything happens to either of us. Corporate espionage, fraud, conspiracy to commit theft of intellectual property. The charges would be quite extensive. How do you think the Ashford Chen board would react to their CEO's daughter attempting a hostile takeover through marriage fraud? The color drained from Victoria's face. Her two security guards shifted uncomfortably, clearly not paid enough to be involved in whatever this was turning into. You bastard, Victoria hissed, her composure finally cracking. Do you have any idea what you've just done? The merger is worth $20 billion. My father will. Your father, Minjun interrupted coldly, will probably thank me for exposing his daughter's criminal enterprise before it could implicate Ashford Chen Industries in a massive scandal. I'll be calling him within the hour to explain exactly what his precious daughter was planning. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Zeph thought she might actually lunge at them. Instead, she took a shaky breath and smoothed down her already perfect hair. When she spoke again, her voice was dangerously calm. Fine, you win this round. But you've made a powerful enemy today, Minjun, and as for you, she turned her venomous gaze to Zeph, enjoy your 15 minutes of fame as the billionaire's fake fiancé. Because that's all this is. A convenient lie. The moment he doesn't need you anymore, you'll be right back in your little art studio, restoring paintings for people who actually matter. The words struck deeper than Zeph wanted to admit. Because Victoria was right, wasn't she? This was all pretend, a performance that had gotten wildly out of hand. But before she could spiral into that thought, Minjun squeezed her hand. You're wrong about her, he said quietly. She matters more than you ever could, because she did the right thing when it cost her something. You wouldn't understand that. Victoria's laugh was bitter. We'll see how noble she feels when your family tears her apart. Good luck with that, sweetheart. You're going to need it. She spun on her heel and stalked away, her security guards following. The service door slammed behind them with a finality that echoed through the hallway. Zeph released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Oh my God, that really just happened. I helped you blackmail a billionaire's daughter. I'm going to jail. I'm definitely going to jail. You're not going to jail. Minjun turned to face her, and she was startled to see him actually smiling. You're a hero. You just saved my company, possibly my life, and definitely my sanity. I crashed your wedding and got you engaged to a stranger. Best decision I've made all year. His smile widened, transforming his entire face from intimidating billionaire to someone startlingly human. Though we should probably discuss the logistics of this fake engagement. My family is still out there, and my father looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. As if on cue, the service door opened again, more gently this time. Minjun's mother appeared, her face drawn with worry. She said something in rapid Korean, her eyes flicking between her son and Zeph with obvious concern. Minjun responded in the same language, his tone respectful but firm. His mother's expression softened slightly as she looked at Zeph, really looked at her, and then said something that made Minjun laugh, an actual, genuine laugh that caught Zeph completely off guard. What did she say? Zeph whispered. She said you must be either very brave or very crazy to crash a billionaire's wedding in an orange dress, and she can't decide which she respects more. Minjun's eyes crinkled at the corners. She also said she wants to talk to you, privately, which is actually a good sign, I think. His mother extended her hand to Zeph with a gentle smile, gesturing toward a nearby door. Zeph looked at Minjun, who nodded encouragingly. It's okay. My mother is formidable but fair, and she's been worried about this wedding for months. I think she'll like you. Zeph followed Minjun's mother into what turned out to be a small sitting room, elegantly furnished with silk couches and modern art. The older woman gestured for her to sit, then took a seat across from her, studying Zeph with dark, intelligent eyes that reminded her strongly of her son. You speak English? Zeph asked hesitantly. Perfectly, Minjun's mother replied, her accent slight but precise. I studied at Oxford. I simply prefer to use Korean with my son. She folded her hands in her lap. Now, tell me who you really are, Zéphirine Bordeaux, and why you disrupted my son's wedding. There was no judgment in her tone, only curiosity. Zeph found herself telling the whole story, the overheard conversations, the investigation, the desperate decision to come here today. She explained about Marcus and his admiration for Minjun's ethical stance, about her grandmother's lessons on doing the right thing, about the 3-week-old knot of anxiety in her stomach as she'd watched Victoria's schemes unfold. Minjun's mother listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When Zeph finally finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. I did not like Victoria, she said finally. From the first moment Minjun brought her home, I knew something was wrong. But my husband was so focused on the business opportunity, and Minjun was so determined to please his father. She sighed. Sometimes, the people we love make foolish decisions. Thank you for preventing my son from making a permanent one. I just... Zeph stumbled over her words. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it needed to be done. A smile ghosted across the older woman's face. Yes, I can see that. She stood, smoothing down her elegant dress. This fake engagement will cause complications. My husband will be furious, the media will be relentless, and society will dissect every aspect of your life. Are you prepared for that? Zeph's stomach dropped. She hadn't thought past the wedding, past the immediate crisis. No, probably not. Good honesty. Minjun's mother moved toward the door, then paused. May I give you some advice? Zéphirine. Please. My son is brilliant, successful, and incredibly stubborn. He has spent his entire life building walls between himself and the world, protecting his principles, his company, his heart. You walked through those walls in an orange dress and overturned his life in under 5 minutes. Her eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. Whatever happens next, don't let him hide behind duty and obligation again. He needs someone who will challenge him to be honest about what he really wants. Before Zeph could process that, they were back in the hallway where Minjun was packing, phone pressed to his ear. He looked up as they approached, said something final into the phone, and hung up. That was my head of PR, he said grimly. The story's already breaking. Tech billionaire's secret fiancé crashes wedding is trending on 3 platforms. We have approximately 30 minutes before this place is swarming with reporters. Wonderful, Zeph muttered. Just wonderful. Minjun's mother said something to her son in Korean, patted his cheek affectionately, and swept away with remarkable poise for someone whose son had just destroyed a multi-billion-dollar merger. She likes you, Minjun said, sounding slightly odd. My mother never likes anyone. Great, that makes one person. Zeph pressed her palms against her eyes. Your father looked like he wanted to murder me with his mind. My father wants to murder everyone with his mind. It's his default state. Minjun moved closer, his expression turning serious. Zéphirine, Zeph, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest. Her heart started hammering again. Okay. This fake engagement. We could end it right now. I could release a statement saying it was a misunderstanding, that you were trying to warn me about Victoria and I misinterpreted the situation in the chaos. You could walk away from this, go back to your life, and never deal with my family or the media circus or any of this mess again. It was exactly what she should want. A clean exit from a situation that had spiraled completely out of control. Or, Zeph heard herself ask, or we commit to this. For real, or at least, real enough to be convincing. We pretend to be engaged for a few months while things settle down, while I sort out the company situation and deal with the fallout from breaking the merger. It would require you to attend events with me, meet more of my family, basically live a partial lie until we can stage a believable breakup. Why would you want that? Why not just end it now? Minjun ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. Honestly, because if I end it now, my father will spend the next 6 months trying to fix the situation with Victoria or finding someone equally unsuitable for me to marry. Because the board needs to see stability, not chaos. And because, he hesitated, Because I trust you, which is insane since we met 20 minutes ago, but there it is. You risked everything to do the right thing. That's rare, especially in my world. Zeph thought about her quiet life, her art studio, her tiny apartment in a neighborhood that was just starting to gentrify. She thought about Marcus and her grandmother and her careful, ordinary existence. She thought about what Victoria had said, enjoy your 15 minutes of fame. Then she thought about the look in Minjun's eyes when she'd shown him the evidence. The way he'd stepped in front of her protectively. The fact that he was giving her a choice instead of assuming she'd go along with whatever he wanted. If I do this, she said slowly, I have conditions. Name them. First, I keep my job. I'm not going to be some kept woman who sits around waiting for you to need arm candy. I worked too hard for my career. Agreed, I respect that. Second, we tell each other the truth. If this is going to work, even as a fake engagement, we can't lie to each other, even if the truth is uncomfortable. Fair, Minjun's expression was unreadable. And third, when this ends, and it will end, we do it cleanly. No drama, no blame, no lingering complications. We go our separate ways and we're okay with that. Something flickered across Minjun's face, too quick for her to identify. Understood, do we have a deal? He extended his hand, formal, businesslike, a contract between strangers. Zeph looked at that hand for a long moment. This was crazy. This was absolutely insane. She was about to commit to a fake engagement with a billionaire she'd met half an hour ago, based on nothing but instinct and a desperate wedding crash. But then again, she'd already crashed the wedding. She'd already turned his life upside down. What was a few more months of controlled chaos? She took his hand. Deal. Minjun's answering smile was brilliant, transforming his features in a way that made her breath catch. Then I suppose we should make our grand exit before the reporters arrive. My car is waiting. Your car? Well, one of them. I thought we might need a quick escape route. He was still holding her hand, his grip warm and steady. Ready to be a billionaire's fake fiancé. Zeph laughed, slightly hysterical. Absolutely not. Let's do it anyway. They made it to the service exit just as the first news vans were pulling up to the hotel's front entrance. Minjun's car turned out to be a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than Zeph's entire year's salary. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, didn't even blink at their disheveled appearance or the insanity of the situation. As they pulled away from the Peninsula Hotel, Zeph caught a glimpse of the melting ice swan through the window, its one-sprout wings now slumped and distorted. A perfect metaphor for Victoria's perfect wedding. So, she said, settling into leather seats that felt like butter, what happens now? Minjun loosened his tie, finally allowing himself to look as exhausted as he must feel. Now I take you to my place so we can plan our strategy. Then tomorrow, we face the media together. Then... He turned to look at her, something unreadable in his dark eyes. Then we figure out how to convince the world that we're madly in love. No pressure, Zeph muttered. None at all. His smile was wry. Welcome to my life, Zephyrine Bordeaux. I promise it's not usually this chaotic. Somehow I doubt that. As the car merged into traffic, Zeph's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Please tell me that wasn't you on the news crashing Minjun Park's wedding. She typed back, would you believe me if I said no? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, oh my God, it was you. Mom is freaking out. Grandma WANTSDTAILS. ZPH, what did you do? Zeph glanced at Minjun, who was already fielding his own barrage of calls and messages, his expression cycling between exhaustion, amusement, and something that looked almost like relief. I'll explain later. She texted Marcus, right now, I need you to do me a favor. Look up everything you can find about Park Technology's corporate structure and the Ashford-Chen merger. And Marcus, you can't tell anyone what I'm about to say. What? I'm engaged to Minjun Park, and I need your help to make sure we both survive it. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, this is the coolest and most terrifying thing you've ever done. I'm in. Send me everything. Zeph smiled despite herself. As the car carried them toward whatever came next, strategy sessions and media circuses, and the impossible task of faking a love story convincing enough to fool the world, she felt something unexpected settle in her chest. Not quite hope, not quite certainty, but maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something real.